On a cold Christmas Eve, a homeless boy shares his last piece of bread with a stray puppy. Little does he know, this simple act of kindness will change both of their lives forever. Follow Billy and Buddy's heartwarming journey of hope, love, and the power of second chances. Snow fell in soft, lazy spirals over the streets of Chicago, blanketing the city in a silent, white hush. Christmas lights twinkled from windows and lampposts, casting golden halos on the icy sidewalks. Laughter echoed faintly from inside warm homes, where families gathered around dinner tables piled high with festive feasts. But outside, in the cold shadows between those windows, a boy named Billy huddled beside a dumpster, his thin coat doing little to fight the biting wind. He was small for his age, 9, maybe 10, but with eyes that looked older, eyes that had seen too much. His hands, wrapped in mismatched gloves, clutched a crumpled paper bag. Inside it, the last thing he had, a stale half of bread, broken but still whole enough to mean something. He hadn't eaten all day. His stomach growled, but he was used to hunger now. It was like a shadow, always there. People passed him by. Some offered a glance. Most didn't. He'd learned how to blend into the background, become invisible. On Christmas Eve, no one wanted to see a homeless child. It ruined the magic. Billy sat on the cold concrete and pulled the bread from the bag. Just as he raised it to his mouth, he heard a faint whimper. He turned his head and saw a puppy, not much more than a fur-covered skeleton, shivering under a broken bench. Its ribs showed through its matted coat, and one of its ears flopped sideways in a way that made it look both pitiful and impossibly endearing. The puppy's amber eyes met Billy's, and in that moment, something shifted. Two lonely souls recognized each other. Billy looked at the bread in his hand, then at the puppy, then back again. A single tear rolled down his cheek. "I know it's not much," he whispered, crawling over slowly. The puppy didn't run. It just watched, tail twitching once. Billy tore the bread in two and placed half in front of the pup. "Merry Christmas," he said softly. The puppy sniffed the offering, then devoured it with a desperation Billy knew all too well. He ate the other half himself, chewing slowly, savoring every bite as if it were a banquet. They sat there in silence, two creatures forgotten by the world, sharing a meager meal like it was a king's feast. Snow piled higher around them. Billy curled into himself, shivering violently. He looked at the puppy. "Guess we're stuck together now, huh?" he mumbled. The puppy, as if understanding, shuffled closer and tucked itself against Billy's side. Its body radiated a tiny bit of warmth, more precious than gold. He named him Buddy. Hours passed. The city grew quieter, as if holding its breath for Christmas morning. Billy and Buddy remained curled together beneath the bench, but the cold was sinking in deeper. Billy's lips turned blue. His hands were numb. He was so tired. His head drooped. Then he heard it. Jingling bells. Footsteps. A soft, rhythmic crunch of boots in snow. Billy struggled to lift his head and saw a woman approaching, her arms full of wrapped parcels. She wore a long red coat and had silver in her hair. Her eyes landed on him, and she stopped. "Oh my God," she whispered, dropping to her knees beside him. "Sweetheart, are you okay?" Billy blinked. The warmth of her hand on his shoulder felt like fire. Buddy growled softly, protective, but didn't move from Billy's side. The woman glanced at the dog, then at the boy. She pulled off her scarf and wrapped it around him. "Can you stand up? Come with me, okay?" Billy wanted to run, wanted to say no. He didn't trust adults. But something in her voice, a kindness, a steadiness, kept him still. He nodded faintly. She guided them both to a van parked nearby, its heater blasting warmth into the cabin. A logo on the door read, Hope Shelter. She introduced herself as Miss Evans. "You're safe now?" she said gently, offering him a cup of hot cocoa and a blanket. "Both of you." Billy held the cocoa in trembling hands, its heat spreading through his frozen fingers. Buddy curled at his feet, eyes finally closing in real sleep. For the first time in as long as he could remember, Billy felt the tight coil of fear in his chest loosen. At the shelter, the world was different. Soft lights, warm air, beds with real blankets. A Christmas tree stood in the corner, glowing with red and gold ornaments. Volunteers moved quietly, carrying trays of food, whispering greetings. Miss Evans brought him a plate, mashed potatoes, green beans, stuffing, and a slice of pie. Billy stared at it for a long time before he began to eat. Every bite made him cry, just a little. Buddy was given a soft blanket and a bowl of warm broth. He licked it clean, then fell asleep with his head on Billy's foot. Later that night, after a hot shower and clean pajamas, Billy lay in a bed so soft he didn't know how to sleep in it. Miss Evans tucked an extra blanket around him. "Merry Christmas, Billy," she said. He looked at her, then at Buddy, curled up on a small bed beside him. "Merry Christmas," he whispered back, his voice catching. And for the first time in years, he dreamed. Not of hunger, not of the cold or the streets. He dreamed of a home. Billy woke up to the sound of laughter. It wasn't the kind of laughter he was used to. Mocking, distant, cold. This laughter was warm, like a blanket wrapped around you when you didn't expect it. He opened his eyes slowly, squinting against the bright sunlight that streamed through the small window. For a moment, he forgot where he was. Then, it hit him. He was in a bed. A real bed. He turned his head and saw Buddy, still asleep, sprawled across his blanket with his paws twitching in a dream. Billy smiled softly. His new friend had been there with him through the cold, through the hunger, through the loneliness. And now, they were here. Together. Billy sat up, stretching his stiff limbs, and looked around. The room was small but cozy, decorated with holiday decorations, paper snowflakes on the walls, a small stack of presents in one corner, and the faint smell of cinnamon filling the air. There was a door to the right, and behind it, he could hear voices. Voices filled with laughter and kindness. The door opened, and Miss Evans stepped in, her face breaking into a warm smile when she saw him awake. "Good morning, Billy," she said softly, as though not wanting to disturb the peaceful atmosphere. "How are you feeling?" Billy blinked, still unsure of what to say. He didn't have the words for this feeling. He didn't have the words for this warmth, this safety that surrounded him. I feel okay," he said, his voice hoarse, unsure of how to articulate the relief in his chest. "Thank you." Miss Evans knelt beside him, gently stroking Buddy's head. The puppy opened one eye, blinked lazily, and then rolled over, exposing his belly for a rub. "You're welcome, Billy," she said, her voice filled with kindness. "You're safe here. We take care of each other." Billy nodded, his heart swelling at the sincerity in her words. He wasn't used to this. People didn't take care of him. They ignored him, or worse, looked right through him. But Miss Evans and the others at the shelter, they had seen him. They had reached out to him when no one else had, and they had given him something he thought he'd lost forever. Hope. "Breakfast is ready," Miss Evans said with a smile. "Come on, let's get some food in you. I'm sure you're hungry." Billy didn't need to be told twice. He scrambled out of bed, his bare feet cold against the floor, and followed Miss Evans down the narrow hallway. The sounds of laughter grew louder as they entered the common room, where a small group of children and adults were gathered around a table, their plates piled high with pancakes, eggs, and fruit. Billy's stomach growled at the sight of the food, but he hesitated, suddenly aware of how little he had eaten in the past few days. "Sit down, Billy," Miss Evans urged, guiding him to an empty seat. She placed a plate in front of him, filling it with a mountain of food. "It's all yours." Billy's hands shook slightly as he reached for the fork. The first bite was almost too much, too rich, too filling, too perfect. He closed his eyes, savoring the taste. He couldn't remember the last time he'd had a meal like this. The food melted in his mouth, each bite more satisfying than the last. The warmth spread through him, not just from the food, but from the sense of belonging that was beginning to take root in his heart. Buddy, now awake, jumped up onto the chair beside him, wagging his tail eagerly. Billy laughed, his first real laugh in what felt like forever, and broke off a small piece of his pancake for Buddy. "Here you go, boy," he said, handing the piece to his puppy. Buddy devoured it in seconds, his tail wagging so fast it was a blur. As Billy finished his breakfast, Miss Evans sat down beside him. "Billy," she said, her voice gentle but firm, "I know you're scared. I can see it in your eyes, but I want you to know something." She paused, her gaze meeting his. "You're not alone anymore. You have a place here. You're part of this family now." Billy looked at her, his heart pounding in his chest. The words felt like a dream, something he couldn't fully grasp. A family? Could he really be part of something like that? He had lived so long on the outside, watching other people from a distance, never feeling like he belonged. The idea of being part of something, of having a place, was almost too much to hope for. But here, now, in this moment, he felt something stir within him. A flicker of possibility. Maybe it was possible. Maybe he could belong. I don't know if I can," Billy whispered, his voice barely audible. "I've never been part of anything." Miss Evans smiled softly, reaching out to gently touch his shoulder. "That's okay, Billy. It's all right to be scared. But you're stronger than you think. And you have Buddy here, too. You're not alone. Not anymore." Billy's eyes went to the puppy, who was now curled up on his lap, looking up at him with those big, trusting eyes. He reached down and stroked Buddy's head, feeling the warmth of the little dog's body against his hands. It felt right, as though this bond between them had always existed, just waiting to be discovered. "Thank you," Billy whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Miss Evans stood up, smiling warmly. "We're going to make sure you get all the help you need, Billy. You're going to school soon, and you'll have everything you need to grow and learn. And if you ever feel alone, you just remember that we're here. All of us." Billy watched her leave the room, a strange, unfamiliar feeling filling his chest. Hope. It was strange, but it was there. He wasn't sure yet if he believed it completely, but something inside him began to shift. Buddy looked up at him, and for the first time, Billy felt like he could see a future. A real one. A future where he wasn't hungry, where he wasn't alone, where he belonged. And that felt like the best gift of all. The next few days at the shelter were a blur of activity, warmth, and new routines. Billy found himself adjusting to the steady rhythm of life in the shelter, even as his heart struggled to believe that such kindness could be real. Every morning, he woke up to the sound of Miss Evans calling the children to breakfast, and each day Buddy stayed by his side, never leaving him alone for even a moment. Billy began to feel a sense of comfort in the little things. The scent of fresh pancakes filling the air, the sounds of laughter echoing through the halls, and the sight of children running around, playing games, their faces bright with joy. It was a stark contrast to the empty streets he had wandered for so long, and it was hard to believe that he had found this place, this family. But there were moments when doubt crept in, especially when the other children would talk about their families, about their parents coming to visit, or their brothers and sisters who lived with them. Billy listened quietly, unsure of how to join in. He didn't have a family, not really. He had never known what it was like to have someone who cared about him in that way. But then he would look at Miss Evans, and he would see the way she smiled at him, as though she truly saw him. And when he looked at the other staff members, he saw the same kindness reflected in their eyes. There was something about this place that made him feel like maybe, just maybe, he could have a family here. The idea was still a little scary, but it was also a flicker of hope. One afternoon, as Billy and Buddy played outside in the small courtyard, a car pulled up to the front of the shelter. The door opened, and out stepped a man and a woman, both in their early 30s, holding hands as they approached the entrance. Billy had never seen them before, but something about their faces caught his attention. They looked kind, genuine, and their eyes were filled with a warmth that Billy recognized. Miss Evans greeted them with a smile, and the three of them exchanged a few words before Miss Evans turned to the group of children who were playing nearby. "Everyone," she called, her voice cheerful. "We have some special guests today." The children gathered around, curious, their eyes wide with excitement. Billy stood off to the side, not sure if he should approach, but Buddy trotted over to the couple, his tail wagging as he sniffed at their shoes. The man bent down to pet him, and the woman smiled at Buddy's antics. Billy's heart pounded in his chest. He wasn't sure why, but he felt drawn to them. The couple seemed so kind, so open. He couldn't help but watch them as they interacted with Buddy, their faces soft and filled with affection. Miss Evans stepped forward, her voice warm but filled with a hint of caution. "Billy," she said, "I'd like you to meet Mr. and Mrs. Smith. They're here to meet you." Billy's eyes widened. "Me?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Yes, Billy," Miss Evans said with a kind smile. "They've heard about you and they want to get to know you." Billy's mind raced. He had no idea what was happening, but he felt a strange sense of calm wash over him. He had always kept his distance from people, unsure of how to trust them, but there was something different about the Smiths. They didn't seem like people who would hurt him. They seemed safe. The Smiths approached Billy slowly, as if giving him space to decide whether or not he wanted to engage. Mrs. Smith crouched down, her smile gentle. "Hello, Billy," she said softly. "We've heard so much about you. How are you feeling?" Billy didn't know what to say. He felt a lump form in his throat, the emotions of the past few days catching up with him all at once. He looked at Buddy, who had settled at his feet, looking up at him with big, trusting eyes. I'm okay," Billy said quietly, his voice trembling slightly. "I'm just not used to this." The Smiths exchanged a glance, as if they understood what he meant. Mr. Smith reached out a hand, his gesture warm but tentative. "We understand," he said. "We've been where you are, and we're not here to pressure you. We just wanted to meet you and see if you might be interested in maybe having a family." Billy's heart skipped a beat. Family. The word sounded so foreign, so distant, and yet it was the one thing he had longed for his entire life. But the idea of having a family, of being part of something, felt so overwhelming. "You don't have to decide anything right now," Mrs. Smith added softly. "We just wanted to say that if you ever want to visit us, or if you ever feel ready, we'd love to have you." Billy's eyes flicked from the Smiths to Miss Evans, who stood nearby with a reassuring smile on her face. She nodded subtly, as if to tell him it was okay to take his time. For the first time in years, Billy felt the walls around his heart begin to crack. He didn't know if he was ready for all of this, but the Smiths' offer, so simple, so full of love, was more than he had ever dreamed of. I'll think about it, Billy said quietly, his voice still uncertain but filled with something else, something new. The Smiths smiled, their eyes filled with understanding. "That's all we ask, Billy," Mr. Smith said. "We'll be here whenever you're ready." As they said their goodbyes and left the shelter, Billy stood in the courtyard, his heart racing. For the first time in a long while, he felt like there was a future where he wasn't just surviving, but truly living. And maybe, just maybe, he could be part of a family. Buddy nudged his hand, and Billy smiled. The puppy's warm, trusting eyes reminded him that he wasn't alone. Not anymore. Billy spent the next few days in a quiet daze, still processing the life-changing events that had unfolded so suddenly. Each day felt like a series of small miracles, moments of kindness, small gestures of hope that stitched his broken heart back together. He tried to keep his emotions in check, but it was hard. His mind kept returning to the day he had met the Smiths, to their warm smiles, their kindness, and the way they had looked at him as if he were worthy of their love. The nights were the hardest, though. Alone in the small dormitory of the shelter, Billy would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, Buddy curled up beside him. He tried to sleep, but his thoughts raced. What if he wasn't ready for a family? What if he couldn't live up to their expectations? What if they changed their minds? But each time, he would glance down at Buddy, who would look up at him with those trusting eyes, and a calm would settle over him. Buddy had chosen him, just as Billy had chosen him. Their bond was unbreakable, and for the first time in his life, Billy didn't feel entirely alone. One crisp afternoon, Billy stood by the window of the shelter, looking out at the snow-covered street. The world outside seemed peaceful, serene, but inside, Billy's heart was a whirlwind of emotions. He was so close to something he had longed for, something he had never dared to dream was possible. A family. But fear gripped him like a vice. What if it was too good to be true? What if it all came crashing down? Buddy trotted over and nuzzled Billy's leg, his tail wagging furiously. Billy chuckled softly, bending down to scratch behind his ears. "What do you think, Buddy?" he whispered. "Should we try? Should we give this a chance?" Buddy looked up at him, his eyes filled with an unconditional trust that Billy couldn't ignore. Maybe it was time to take that leap of faith. Maybe it was time to trust someone else. To believe that good things could still happen to him. Billy took a deep breath, his heart pounding. He had made his decision. He would see the Smiths again. He would take a step towards something he had never thought possible. A family. The next day, Billy approached Miss Evans with a quiet resolve. "Miss Evans, I want to visit the Smiths," he said, his voice steady despite the nervous energy thrumming through him. "I'm ready." Miss Evans looked up from the paperwork she was reviewing, her eyes softening with understanding. "Are you sure, Billy?" "It's a big decision." Billy nodded, his throat tight with emotion. "I'm sure. I want to try." Miss Evans gave him a reassuring smile, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "I'm so proud of you, Billy. It takes a lot of courage to open up again, and I think you've made the right choice." Billy's chest swelled with gratitude as he turned to leave. This was the first time he felt like he was in control of his life. It wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about living, and he wasn't going to let fear hold him back. That afternoon, the Smiths arrived to pick him up. When Billy saw their car pull into the shelter's driveway, His heart leapt in his chest. Buddy wagged his tail, sensing his excitement, and trotted ahead to greet the Smiths. Billy hesitated for a moment before stepping outside, his breath forming small clouds in the cold air. His palms were sweaty, his heart hammering in his chest. Was he really ready for this? But then he saw Mrs. Smith's warm smile, her eyes full of kindness and patience. She waved at him, and without a second thought, he walked toward her, the door to a new chapter of his life opening before him. As they drove through the city streets, Billy's mind raced. The world outside the car seemed different somehow, more vibrant, more alive. He couldn't stop thinking about the Smiths' home. He had only seen it briefly, but the image of it stayed with him. A cozy house with a welcoming front porch, a place where he could belong. When they arrived, the warmth of the house hit him immediately. The soft glow of Christmas lights decorated the windows, and the smell of something delicious wafted from the kitchen. Billy felt his nervousness begin to ebb, replaced by a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. The Smiths showed him to his new room, a small, comfortable space with a soft bed and a window that looked out onto the snowy yard. He sat on the edge of the bed, overwhelmed by the kindness and love that seemed to radiate from every corner of the house. This was real. This was home. Mrs. Smith knelt beside him, her hand on his shoulder. "Billy, if you ever need anything, we're here for you. You're part of our family now." Billy's eyes filled with tears as he nodded. It was hard to believe, but he knew, deep down, that this was where he was meant to be. The past was behind him. This was his future. Buddy bounded into the room, wagging his tail as he jumped onto the bed beside Billy. Billy laughed, the sound pure and unburdened. For the first time in a long time, he felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. The first few weeks in the Smiths' home passed by in a blur of new experiences, each one more wonderful than the last. Billy had never known what it was like to have a home. Truly a home. A place where someone cared enough to make sure you were safe, fed, and loved. At the Smiths' house, he felt like he was living in a dream. He spent mornings helping Mrs. Smith with breakfast, learning how to make pancakes and scrambled eggs the way she liked them. Evenings were filled with family dinners, where they all gathered around the table to share a meal and talk about their days. Billy had never known such comfort. The food was good, the conversation warm, and the laughter genuine. There were no more long nights spent worrying about where he would sleep, no more fears about what the next day would bring. Here, there was only peace. The Smiths made sure Billy never felt like an outsider. They included him in everything: weekend trips to the park, movie nights, and even decorating the house for Christmas. Each day, Billy's confidence grew, as he learned more about his new family, and each day, his bond with Buddy deepened. The puppy had become his best friend, his constant companion, and they were inseparable. Wherever Billy went, Buddy was right by his side, and Billy couldn't help but smile at the joy that radiated from the little dog. One Saturday afternoon, Mr. Smith took Billy to the local animal shelter, where they volunteered together. Billy had been hesitant at first. He wasn't sure he could handle the emotions that came with seeing other animals in need. But Mr. Smith reassured him. "It's about giving back, Billy," he said. "You've been given so much, and now it's time to share that love with others." Billy found it wasn't as difficult as he thought. He spent the afternoon walking the dogs, feeding them, and cleaning their pens. With each dog he cared for, he couldn't help but think of the love and care he had received since arriving at the Smiths' home. It felt good to give back, to help those in need the way others had helped him. As Christmas approached, Billy was filled with a sense of excitement and wonder. It was the first Christmas he had ever spent in a real home, with a real family. The Smiths had decorated the house with lights, garlands, and a beautiful tree that stood tall in the corner of the living room. Billy's heart swelled with happiness as he helped them hang ornaments and string tinsel. The holiday was about more than just the decorations or the presents. It was about love and family and belonging. For the first time in his life, Billy felt like he truly belonged. On Christmas Eve, as they gathered around the tree, exchanging gifts and sharing stories, Billy couldn't help but reflect on how far he had come. Just a year ago, he had been cold and hungry on the streets, with nothing but a piece of bread to share with a stray puppy. Now, he was surrounded by a family who loved him, with a future full of promise ahead of him. Buddy sat by his feet, his tail wagging as if he too understood the significance of the moment. Billy reached down to pet him, feeling the soft fur beneath his fingers. "We made it, Buddy," Billy whispered. "We really made it." As the night wore on, Billy felt a deep sense of peace settle within him. The journey he had been on, through hardship, loneliness, and loss, had brought him to this moment, to this place where he had found love and a family. He had learned that kindness could change lives, that compassion could heal wounds, and that hope was never truly lost. His past had shaped him, but it did not define him. It was the love and support of the Smiths, and the loyalty of Buddy that had shown him what the future could hold. The next morning, as the sun rose over the snowy landscape, Billy woke up to the sound of laughter and the smell of breakfast cooking. He joined the Smiths in the kitchen, feeling the warmth of the family envelop him like a comforting embrace. "This is just the beginning, Billy," Mr. Smith said as they sat down to breakfast. "You've got a whole future ahead of you, and we're so glad you're sharing it with us." Billy smiled, his heart full. There was so much ahead of him, so many dreams to chase, so many adventures to embark on, and no matter where the road took him, he knew one thing for certain: he would never be alone again. With Buddy by his side, and the Smiths as his family, Billy had everything he needed to face the future with hope and determination. His story, once filled with darkness and despair, was now one of light and love. And no matter where life would take him, he would always remember the kindness that had saved him and the puppy who had given him everything. As he sat there with the Smiths, his heart full of gratitude, he knew that this was only the beginning of his journey. Together, they would face whatever came next, and with Buddy's wagging tail and his new family's love, Billy felt ready for anything.